Okay, this is part two of our Oscars tier list of the non-Best Picture top 8 movies, as we are now from the years 2005 through 2009. And obviously, we begin with 2005. And we start up with Cinderella Man, which is actually the second film collaboration between Ron Howard and Russell Crowe about James Braddock, or Jim Braddock, I forget what it was, but I will just call him Braddock throughout this movie, the famous boxer in the Roaring Twenties of his deal during the Great Depression. And I actually saw this movie back in ninth grade for history class when we were learning about the Great Depression. So, and it kind of goes into a little bit about the famous boxer during his family life and his manager's time during this time where he was not really at his point as he used to be. And then during this period, it would be a massive comeback for him after when the stock market crashed and stuff like that, leading up to a big, massive fight that obviously did not, obviously, big match, I meant, excuse me, that would go into. I am putting this one in. I'm going to put this one in B, and this is mainly because I really do like our main character's story, but when it comes to like the supporting aspect, especially with like the kind of the relationship would he would have with his wife, played by Renee Zellweger, even though it does kind of also go in a little bit of the situation of the depression, it doesn't really. It does. It kind of almost feels like It's kind of more of an afterthought or the stereotypical way of a portrayal of a wife in a biopic in many other movies. Like even though this movie is set in the Great Depression, it just still feels like that. Even depending on which era of movie, it just feels like that. But yeah, all the scenes with Braddock when we follow his journey is really great. Even when the scenes when he's not boxing and stuff like that, like whether it be working at that docks area, like meeting a new friend or stuff like that, and just throughout his journey is just pretty unique, I would say. So, but I want to thank my ninth and 10th grade history teacher for showing me this movie as well as films like Selma and the original 12 Angry Men. Okay, next up we have The Constant Gardener, which I believe it's Fernando Morales' follow up to City of God, which won Best Supporting Actress for Rachel Weisz and was also nominated in Adapted Screenplay and I believe Film Editing as well, but just in the top 8 it was just Adapted Screenplay and Rachel Weisz. A movie that kind of got Ray Fiennes close into another Best Actor nomination before Conclave, but this was probably and The Grand Budapest Hotel were the two films that he had close of a nomination after The English Patient. Um, I'm giving The Constant Gardener a D. I get the whole scenario of what the story was. I get the story of obviously of Ray Fiennes' character trying to find answers of his wife's unexpected death in Africa, somewhere in a country in Africa. I forget which one. I get the whole scenario of him trying to investigate. I think it's just it kind of felt a bit bland. Like I do get the story, but I just don't think like I don't know, like with some of the other films here that I mentioned, like with Dirty Pretty Things or Monster or Maria Full of Grace or The Quiet American. I get where the story is going. I just think maybe the dialogue just did not work for me, and maybe I just think like when you get to all the back scenes with Rachel Weisz's character of what she was doing prior to her tragic death, the characters that she plays in the movie, it just kind of leaves you with a lot of unanswered maybe questions of what was the intention of that accident and stuff like that, and would lead into a very interesting ending of where the location where Fiennes is trying to find the location. It's just like just somehow kind of doesn't really work for me. But this is a movie that actually ended up did work for me of all the answers that would end up coming, and that is a History of Violence from David Cronenberg. Probably like the legit time, the closest thing for a David Cronenberg movie to get close of getting an Oscar nomination for Best Picture. I ended up really liking this one. I am gonna give this one an A. The bringing up the story of of an answer of Mortensen's other former personality that he was before he became what he was, an owner of a little cafe with his with his wife, like specifically owning this cafe. And then after when he saved a lot of the people, including his restaurant from a attempted robbery, um, he somehow the violence that he made that ended up becoming heroic ended up coming back to haunt him of basically relatives of his mob related family to try to come and find him to pay the consequences what he did all those years ago, even though he wants to have an independent life with his wife and his two kids. It's just end up becoming a bit more serious, specifically when William Hurt, who plays Mortensen's specific brother, when he comes in to try to get him back to the Philadelphia area, away from, I believe it's in Minneapolis, somewhere in, like, it was somewhere in the middle of the U.S. I forget which one. I keep thinking it's I feel like it's almost in Minneapolis or something like that, but I don't think that's true or not, or in Minnesota, excuse me. But I forget which state it is in. But obviously, it does lead to massive consequences. Obviously, with especially the relationship with his wife, played by Maria Bello, who is also pretty great in this. Definitely could have gotten a great supporting actress nomination. Even Viggo Mortensen would have been a great Best Actor nomination. He did kind of got a makeup nomination for a lead performance in a Cronenberg movie, which we'll talk about in 2000 when we get to 2007. But yeah, I really do like this movie. I do have a couple of David Cronenberg films I did enjoy, like Crash, which I think we can might agree is the better Crash movie than Paul Haggis's film from this year. Even though that's an NC-17 film, Paul Cronenberg's Videodrome is great. I think Scanners, I believe. Like, yeah, he does have a bit of a hit or miss filmography, but I actually did end up getting this just last month on the Criterion flash sale of the Blu-ray, after when I decided to, because I originally bought the regular Blu-ray during the Amazon Prime Day sale before this was announced in the Criterion lineup. I ended up selling my original Blu-ray to the local place that resells used Blu-rays in my area, and then I just got the Criterion one not that long ago. So very happy I ended up getting that upgrade. Yeah, even though it's not really that like a big action thing or something like that, but just the way how it kind of like bringing back past events that you do not want to bring up again and just want to completely forget about. But obviously, he never told this about his wife or his kids in general before what happened. So, and obviously, the ending obviously leaves you with a lot of question marks. What happens next after when Mortensen characters comes back home after he left Philadelphia to deal with his family. So, great way for yeah. This is definitely probably what was Cronenberg's best performance movie at the Oscars, and this was obviously the final Oscar nomination for William Hurt. He got a supporting actor nomination, and the movie got an adapted screenplay nomination. So it probably would have made it in the 10. It would have been a lot more supportive, like Maria Bello and Viggo Mortensen would have been nominated. And now here's a little bit of a kind of a fan favorite for some people, and that is Hustle and Flow, which his highest nomination was for Best Actor for Terrence Howard, his only Oscar nomination. I know many people might know him a little bit in other film roles, or even on the television side with Law and Order. I know Special Victims Unit for some people. I know my mother is a Law and Order nut. Well, she's been like that ever since even when I was born. Obviously, this movie also did won Best Original Song for "It's Hard Out Here for a Pimp," which got members of 3-6 Mafia to win an Oscar. I am giving this one. I'm gonna give this a C. I really do like the concept of the idea of what Howard's character wants to do to make this successful although rap album, and in a very unique way without doing like the cheapest way to do it, like in his house, like having a lot of egg cartons used as the backgrounds to protect from, like, like how like the styrofoam sounds that you use when you're recording through a microphone and stuff like that. You know what I'm talking about. And yeah, the song in "It's Hard Out Here for a Pimp" actually does kind of is pretty work well in context, especially how with Taraji P Henson's character also has to do the main lyric of it. It just really works well. But the rest of the movie, outside of the making of the song and like the music, I feel like I don't have a specific memory towards it that I don't remember as I used to. So that's kind of unfortunate. Even though there are some okay moments in the movie, but that's the only thing I remember. Is just like the whole making of the songs and just like the setting up this kind of studio in his house and stuff like that. That's just the only thing I kind of remember. I don't remember anything else other than like, oh, and also maybe the creative music process for it, but that's kind of it. So yeah, I don't really. remember much, but it would have made sense for me to put in D. But I think since it does have some memorable moments during the making of like the music, especially the song, Oscar-winning song, I am putting it in C. Next up is Junebug, and this was the movie that got Amy Adams her first Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress. Oh, oh boy. Oh gosh, there was a lot of things to talk about this movie that I can't really talk about because it's just like you. It's basically about this married couple coming in to revisit their family. I think it's the husband's side of the family that they visit, and it's like a pretty southern family to be precise. You can tell based on the accents, and the sister is who is Amy Adams' character is pregnant, and there's like a lot of kind of like a unique homecoming things going on around it. And obviously, I think the wife was also very interested in an art piece from a racist man. And yes, I say legit racist because the thing is, odd to say this, yeah, I don't know if this was intentional in the script. Hopefully, they had to get a lot of improvements from a lot of African Americans, but yeah, this from whoever made I forget who made this movie, but there's a bit of a use of that racist character. He uses the N word a lot in this movie. None of the other characters do, but he does. So, yeah, I'm kind of surprised this movie is not getting a lot of controversy that it has because of that. Well, then again, and it was very, very independent. Not a lot of people did not have it in their top tens of the year, so but it kind of felt a little bit uncomfortable for me. I kind of already mentioned that I talked about this in a couple of other movies I mentioned. It just feels uncomfortable for me hearing that, except like for obviously for other movies that do make sense, like Straight Outta Compton or like other films specifically. We'll get to that when that movie in the fourth part of this tier list. But yeah, I just it's not boring. I will mention that. So I'm gonna give it a D. It's just like it's very odd. It's not boring. It's just like there are some decent things, like things you can remember about the characters, but that's kind of it. It's just basically like trying to reconnect with this family, and that's kind of basically it. And there's really not much of a story. And I think like what the son has to try to find a job or something like that, or go to college. I don't remember, but yeah, I can like yeah. This was the movie that got Amy Adams her first Oscar nomination. I don't think this was not a great start for it, especially the type of character she plays. But not anything racist, but her playing this young pregnant woman. But it's just it. There's just not a lot of memorable things about this film. Next up is Match Point from Woody Allen, which earned an original screenplay nomination. And I'm actually going to give this one an A pretty very unique, kind of a not really much of a love triangle scenario, but more of a thriller scenario of this romance plot with Jonathan Rhys Meyers, Scarlett Johansson, and Emily Mortimer, and kind of like not really specifically about tennis, but more specifically about this romantic scandal that Rhys Meyers obviously has almost like a mess. Like Johansson's character is basically almost like who is this American that's obviously here at for this unique little instructing event or something like that. It's almost like a massive like a lust for the main character. And obviously the thing is obviously his best friend's sister, played by Emily Mortimer, really likes our main character, and she's fantastic in this. But all of our main characters really do a great job here, and this is also very credit to Woody Allen's writing, and I can see why it got that screenplay nomination. Um, it really did decently well at the Golden Globes. I know it got a motion picture drama nomination. Johansson got a supporting actress nomination. Uh, I'd know Jonathan Rhys Meyers for best actor in drama. I don't think he did make it in there. I'm surprised this wasn't even a big BAFTA thing because it's kind of technically is a British movie, even though it was made by an American. But yeah, it really is that great with the suspense thriller it has between our main character and Johansson's character that she's almost like Reese's character is basically saying Johansson is almost like the down like the person that can ruin his life. and the way how it goes into the ending, and just like, oh boy, you can see where it's coming from, because yeah, this is kind of a bit of a romantic thriller, to be precise. Now let's go into a little bit of a lighthearted note from instead of something a little suspense. We got Mrs. Henderson Presents, from Stephen Frears, I believe. Yep. So just a year before he had the Queen. So man, he had a great back-to-back years of movies here, because I ended up really liking this one, and I'm gonna actually also give this one an A as well. Because I really do like this whole story of how Laura Henderson actually really did wanted to actually try to make sure that this actually her theater really is a massive success even during the beginning years of World War II. And obviously, with her connection with Bob Hoskins' character, I believe Vivian is, I think that's called, who Bob Hoskins really should have been recognized. I know he was campaign supporting, but I think he might be considered a lead for me. And also, this is technically kind of the first Weinstein Company movie to receive an Oscar nomination in general after Weinstein left Miramax, of course. I'm surprised, and it's very interesting because Fears would do the Queen at Miramax without Weinstein, so that's just kind of odd. But yeah, so this was kind of the first successful Weinstein Company Oscar baitness, even though it is a really great one. And Stephen Frears does have a pretty great filmography. He, of course, not just with the Queen, but also with the Grifters and My Beautiful Laundrette. I've not seen like Victoria and Abdul or anything like that, or some of his other films, but from what I've seen, the four films I've seen, it's pretty really good, and this is another fantastic one that really should have got a lot more recognition. I think it was big at the BAFTAs, definitely. But like Bob Hoskins is fantastic in this. And then of course Judi Dench is really really good in this one. Um, would she be? Oh man, man, that's a really almost really decent Best Actress lineup, with the exception of two, to be precise. And yeah, actually, all the Best Actress nominees, none of them were up for Best Picture. So, yeah, I get to talk all about all five of them in this tier list, specifically in this part for 2009. Yeah, well, I'll have to think about this a bit, because that wouldn't also be a thing when we do the 2005 personal list when I get to that one in the near future by next year. But yeah, this is a very fantastic British biopic of going about like the theater, and another fantastic movie about the theater industry. Great back to back, I would say, with B and Julia. Although B and Julia was a fictional story, while Mrs. Henderson Presents is a biopic. So yeah, I would say that would be a good back to back pairing, I would say. Next up is North Country, and believe it or not, this would be a movie that would basically be, if this was a movie that came out like in 2017, this probably would have been the Oscar winner for Best Picture instead of The Shape of Water, because this movie does involve around sexual harassment in the workplace at a oil industry, or is it a coal mine, like some sort of industry, like industry workplace, of how like with all the sexual harassment. You might know what this is. I'm putting this one in A. This is a fantastic movie that has aged very well. Charlize Theron, definitely, I would say, I think this is my favorite Oscar nomination from her, more so than Monster, sorry, and obviously we agree it's better than Bombshell. Frances McDormand's pretty decent in her role as well, even though some people might not like it, but I do really like that performance. And in fact, I think based on that, she would actually be my pick for supporting actress in that lineup in particular. So she would have been my pick for that one. It also stars Jeremy Renner in one of his very early movies. Like, this was before he went big in the Hurt Locker in the MCU. This was like one of his early roles, and this was a very big supporting role he had. So it's very surprising that he kind of did not got recognized. Obviously, playing somebody that who kind of had almost harassed Charlize Theron's character when she was a teenager in high school and stuff like that. So, and with him working in the same industry as her, it just really feels uncomfortable, and you can understand where all the female workers in the industry are coming from. And yeah, this is a movie that has aged phenomenally. The writing's pretty good, and it really does have a great message, of course. And obviously, this is way before the Me Too movement became a thing, and this is definitely one of those movies that has aged phenomenally. And now we are into Joe Wright's what could be like his almost, I would say, period piece trilogy, if you can count it with Anna Karenina and Atonement, with the first one being the iconic adaptation of Pride and Prejudice, starring Keira Knightley right after like her big little role in Pirates of the Caribbean, of course. I am putting this one also in A. This is a fantastic adaptation of the story. You really do fall along with the Jane Austen story. Keira Knightley is fantastic in this performance. Definitely would have been a great Oscar victory. Either that or Charlize Theron, Judi Dench. It's between one of these three. I just realized that. Oh man, I really don't know because all three of them are fantastic in one way, shape, or form. I don't know which one would be my pick right now. Oh gosh, I would really have to think about that since I just have all three of them right next to each other on the A list here because they're all great adaptations and obviously all with having different unique sour relationships they all have, and obviously it's very odd that Pride and Prejudice almost is giving me a little bit of vibes of Little Women, even though they're completely different stories and completely different settings. Where Pride and Prejudice is obviously a British thing and Little Women is an American thing, so that's obviously one thing to note. Yeah, but it also stars a very young Rosamund Pike, a very young Carey Mulligan. Donald Sutherland is in this movie. Um, yeah, this is a pretty well unique cast to say the least. But yeah, Keira Knightley and the phenomenal writing, which is really a shame it did not get that adapted screenplay nomination. I would have definitely would have placed it over Munich or The Constant Gardener. Yeah, that's definitely probably one of the biggest all-time adapted screenplay snubs ever. I can't believe that did not get that nomination because it would be very questioning would have made it in the 10 without that screenplay nomination. Easily, I think, without a doubt, Joe Wright's best film I've seen compared to the four I've seen because obviously Atonement wasn't really my thing. Anna Karenina, great in a technical aspect, not great on a writing and an acting aspect. And Darkest Hour, I don't remember what I talked about in the Best Picture tier list. So, yeah, this is easily, I think, probably would be his most memorable film, even though Atonement got that Best Picture nomination. Now we're into The Squid and the Whale, which is Noah Baumbach's first movie centering around divorce, because this was before Marriage Story. And unlike with Marriage Story, which received a Best Picture nomination and three acting nominations, one of them being a win in original screenplay, and even one for score, The Squid and the Whale only just earned an original screenplay nomination for Noah Baumbach, starring Jeff Daniels, Laura Linney, and a very young Jesse Eisenberg. I'm going to give this one. Oh boy. Yeah, I'm gonna have to give this an E. And this is mainly because all the characters are just not that. They're not hateable by anything. You get the scenario. I think it's just. I saw this after Marriage Story, and because this is obviously a movie that's available on the Criterion lineup. Man, both Baumbach movies about divorce are both in the Criterion collection. That's just odd. It's just that unlike Marriage Story, where it kind of primarily focuses on the parents, the Squid and the Whale just kind of focus on all four of them. And in just one way, bad way, shape, or form. Like you get it from the perspective of both of the soon to be now ex husband and wife, and then the two sons, especially one who's a teenager and one who's a kid. And you just don't get the status of why both of them just, especially with Daniel's character almost acting more like an abuse or verbal abuse to be precise, when his mother is just not really that happy or just wants to hang out with who would be soon to be dating like that kid's tennis coach or stuff like that. But it's just like all the characters just don't really like the entire family just doesn't really like each other that much. It's just Baumbach's the way how Baumbach writes his movies most of the time. It's just like with that or Marriage Story or even when he co-wrote with his wife Greta Gerwig on Barbie, it's just I don't know where some of the dialogue he has written for some of his movies or even Francis Hall where it gets at. I'm not sure what Jay Kelly would do if it does get nominated for any Oscars, even though Emily Mortimer is a co-writer on Jay Kelly with Baumbach, but I might not be looking forward to much of Jay Kelly, even though I did like Marriage Story, and even though I do prefer that over that because it had great performances, but it's just the performances in this makes just some of our characters just very unlikable. Next up is Syriana, which earned a Best Supporting Actor win for George Clooney and Original Screenplay nomination. Some people would have put it in adapted, but honestly, I am just so confused with this movie that uh, I think I might have to give it yeah, because of how absolutely confusing it is. I might have. Well, Clooney's performance is pretty decent, and I can see why he was the one that stood out amongst the cast. But everyone else, I just don't remember, so I might have to give this an F. I just don't have I just don't know what on earth the concept. Like, I kind of get it. Like, Clooney works with like some sort of a like what on Islamic group or something like that, but I'm not really 100% sure. But it's just like that's the only thing I can think of. Like being friends with some Islamic groups and it's just kind of confusing and stuff like that. And then like you got all these other characters like around, and it's like it's not. And I can see why Clooney, like even though his character is the center of the poster, this is why everyone went supporting because there's no legit true main character. So yeah, it's just an absolute confusing movie. Like you can see where Clooney, like it, like that supporting actor win, I would say has not aged very well for me. I just don't like. I keep forgetting Clooney does have a second Oscar for Best Picture for Argo, but yeah, it's just like I think he would have gotten a better Oscar win for either Up in the Air or The Descendants, not for Syriana. Now we're coming into a movie that has not aged pretty well on the casting decision, not because of the subject matter, but because it's having a straight woman playing a trans role with Transamerica, starring Felicity Huffman, which got her only Oscar nomination, and original song for Traveling Through, which actually would have been my pick. I am actually going to put this one in B. I know a lot of people might disagree with me because of just the casting decision, but I really do like that kind of road trip movies of the whole journey of her trying to reconnect with her son after a long periods of time without not even knowing who um, like what her when she kind of reconnects after I think when her what was her son's mother passing away or something like that. She comes in without not even knowing that the son of the family obviously doesn't even know who she actually is until she actually finds out how who when our kid actually finds out who he actually is. Um, so yeah, it's kind of a bit difficult, but I do really enjoy this. Yeah, I do get it. It's not very uncomfortable movie to watch, especially because of the subject matter. But and I know some people would also compare that to Boys Don't Cry, of course, another movie that obviously had might not age well because of the casting decision of a straight woman playing a trans male role, or which in this case for Felicity Huffman it would be a trans woman role. So it is just kind of very difficult to do so in today's standards of cinema. But I really do enjoy this road trip style movies. I'm kind of sorry about that. And last, for 2005, we got the James Mangold, Johnny Cash, June Carter biopic, Walk the Line. So before Mangold did A Complete Unknown, he did Walk the Line here. So I am putting this one in B. I really like the whole story of the specifically getting to know who Johnny Cash was, of his origin stories, and also a bit of the relationship between with him and June. But it obviously does fall in the typical biopic format that it obviously has done with movies with obviously relationships, drugs, and other stuff like that we have seen in other movies like Elvis and Bohemian Rhapsody. Even though this was before Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story mocked the entire music biopic genre before that uh before or this movie after this movie came out, excuse me. So yeah, it does feel a little bit of kind of like I've seen this before, but I really do like some of Joaquin Phoenix's singing here as Johnny Cash, especially his rendition of Folsom Prison Blues. That was pretty good. Reese Witherspoon does a great job singing as June Carter in this one as well, although the relationship does kind of very stereotypical in a biopic format, of course. But I'm gonna be kind of honest. I feel like Reese might be a little bit more supporting in this movie because I think it really focuses a lot more on Johnny instead of both of them, even though it's kind of like a central plot. But it's like Joaquin has a lot more screen time, and Reese kind of doesn't have a lot. I will be honest. I'm sorry to say this, but that's why I feel like all of the other four Best Actress nominees probably were better than her on a technicality, because Witherspoon, I would say, is more supporting. It is definitely a good one. I would probably go back. Oh gosh, when you compare this to A Complete Unknown, it's kind of difficult which is better, because they both have great renditions from great singing voices from all the cast members, specifically with Joaquin and Reese in this film, and then you have Timothy Chalamet, Edward Norton, and Monica Barbaro in A Complete Unknown. But I think, oh gosh, I guess because A Complete Unknown doesn't really have a lot of the drug aspect to it, I think I might go towards that over Walk the Line, because it doesn't have that portion of it in the biopic, from what I remembered in A Complete Unknown, especially since it kind of also has a little bit of the folk genre a bit. So I might prefer A Complete Unknown over Walk the Line, but I do like both of these music biopic movies from James Mangold. Next up is 2006 here. And we begin this up with Edward Zwick's Blood Diamond, and I think the last time the Oscars would recognize one of Zwick's movies, its highest nominations were Supporting Actor for Jaimin Hunsu and Best Actor for Leonardo DiCaprio. I am putting this one in A. I really like this entire kind of story of this whole jewel and treasure kind of like mystery case, specifically, like, or this, like, I forget, like, kind of, I think it's a jewel story of stuff like that, of this trying to find this and trying to be almost like what DiCaprio's character is doing here, and obviously the relationship he would have with not just Hunsu's character, but this reporter played by Jennifer Connelly. And man, Connelly, man, she really had another fantastic performance that really could have been a good Oscar nomination. Another one. Like, there are so many movies throughout I mentioned about, even in the first part, that she had a lot of great starring big movie supporting roles in the 2000s that could have gotten her an Oscar nomination other than just her win for A Beautiful Mind. And this is another one of the case. And I might actually do agree with the Academy. I do prefer DiCaprio's nomination for the Blood Diamond over The Departed. I think Blood Diamond had the better performance of what he did. He really had a showing one here. I think Jaimon Unsu would be my personal pick for Best Supporting Actor. I think he would have been my personal pick. So yeah, I know a lot of people would be asking me one specific movie, but we'll talk about that other film when we get to it in this for this year specifically. But yeah, it did, I think, also got a film editing nomination. It really is a really unique movie and really well shot. Really well crafted and directed in a way from Edward Zwick. Oh boy, now we're into Borat, Culture Learnings for America's Beneficent Glorious Nation of Kazakhstan. The first movie starring this iconic Sacha Baron Cohen character from the Algae Show. I think that's what Sacha Baron Cohen show was called. Oh gosh. Oh boy. I did watch this prior to my Oscar movie marathon of 2020, like back in 2021 when I had to watch the sequel. We'll talk about that in part 5. Oh gosh. Yeah, I just can't get into Borat here. It's just, oh gosh. Oh boy. I think the worst scene, I think, in the entire movie for me is like how Borat needs to know how to take a two. Coming from a country and not knowing American culture, even though I know it's just a comedy, but obviously this got an adapted screenplay nomination. And by the way, one of the people that got a writing or a story credit was Todd Phillips. Yes, the director of Joker had a screen credit for this movie, and that was his first Oscar nomination. Oh gosh. I just the dinner scene is just awful. Next up is Alfonso Cuarón's Children of Men, which earned an adapted screenplay nomination, and I am going to give this one a B. This was another movie I actually saw for specifically for a movie club live stream, other than Collateral. Um, Really interesting thriller synopsis where Clive Owen has to deal with throughout his journey. It's been over a few years since I've seen it, but I remembered really enjoying it. Um, like just the whole atmosphere of the cinematography from Emmanuel Lubensky, just how the clouds and the color gradient throughout this movie is just really well done, to be precise. I don't really remember much of the characters. I think that could be the reason why I have it in a B, and it would be a very low B, I would state. So that could be it. I might have to kind of look at what the story was about again, so I can remember what it was. Now we're into a fan favorite, The Devil Wears Prada, which earned a Best Actress nomination for Meryl Streep, and I know we're getting a sequel next year. I am putting this one in B, but it would be like a very like just a standard B. Um, I really do like the whole story of where Anne Hathaway's character goes from like almost like a second in command to Emily Blunt to like now or just like the phone person, and then she ends up getting almost these massive promotions one way shape or form, even though it's not really intentional or anything like that. But with the way how Streep's character is so much in this fashion of her devotion to her career is just like, and then when Hathaway's character comes in, she just kind of basically sees what the whole scenario of how important Streep's character really is. I really do like the writing on this one. It really definitely would have been a great adapted screenplay nomination. I'm not really sure how the sequel is going to be when it comes out next year, but since it's like a very early release, even though that doesn't usually happen all the time, I mean, Top Gun Maverick and Mad Max Fury Road and Dune Part 2 were released in the first half of the year, but the first film obviously wasn't really a big Oscar player other than just Streep's performance and costume design, and that was kind of about it. So if you're a person that's really big in the costume design industry, this is definitely going to be a movie really for you. And now we come into Dreamgirls, which is the first and only movie to lead the Oscar nominations without getting nominated for Best Picture or Director for Bill Condon. Ouch. That kind of really hurt the movie a bit for its chances. Like, it was not going to probably win Best Picture, but that's probably like one of the biggest Best Picture snubs of the 2000s, right up there next to The Dark Knight for many people, especially it led the nominations. And obviously, its biggest performance were in the two supporting categories, with Eddie Murphy's only Oscar nomination for supporting actor, and I think acting, because I don't know if he was nominated for writing Beverly Hills Cop. I don't remember. But definitely acting wise, yes. And it won supporting actress for Jennifer Hudson, which I might say is probably one of the most undeserving best supporting Oscar wins, because it's just basically her singing, and I know which number it was that got her the Oscar, and that's just kind of like one of the basic bland Oscar wins I've seen. I have to give this one a D. I just sorry for this, but I really didn't really care for it. Like there are actually some good songs in this movie, and I will admit all three songs that were nominated for original song, "Listen," "Love You I Do," and "Patience," they all worked well, great in context in the movies, and I can see why in this movie, and I can see why it got the best original song. All three of them got in for original song. They worked well in context here, so credit to the song team on that for actually really working well with the story for the movie. But it's just like Jamie Foxx's character is either in love with Beyonce's character or Jennifer Hudson's character, and that's kind of it. Anika Noni Rose is unfortunately just there, and that's kind of a shame her character got really overlooked. I'm glad where her career went into, of course, with The Princess and the Frog, so great for her where she got. But yeah, that was another great performance. I think she might have been my MVP of the cast, I would say, I'll be honest. But I really do like all three songs that were in this movie in context. So well done to the music team on that. But it's just the rest of the numbers, including Jennifer Hudson's big number. No, it's just not for me. Next up is Half Nelson, which earned a Best Actor nomination for Ryan Gosling, his first nomination. And it's basically a kind of almost scenario. It's just teachers' issues with drugs, and like a student kind of finds out all about this, and that's kind of it. Yeah, I'm gonna have to give this one an F. I just don't think this movie just did not work at all. Gosling's character is just so crazy with what he does, and just not really fun as a teacher. Sharika Epps, I don't remember what she did much other than just obviously knowing the secret of what he does, and that's kind of basically it. I don't remember much what also she does outside of that, but it just, I think Nelson's, I believe that's his name, Gosling's character's name. I just don't think it just, I just didn't really like this movie. Now we're into The Last King of Scotland from Kevin MacDonald, and which won Best Actor for Forrest Whitaker in his supporting performance. Yes, I found him supporting because technically James McAvoy is technically the lead of this entire movie. I'm gonna put this one in C. I really do like the whole story of this British doctor coming in from Uganda and almost being a close friend to the real life dictator Amin. Even though the Scottish doctor is actually a fictional character to be precise, but it's just a really unique story from his perspective. But when it gets to kind of like some of the odd scenarios, what he has to do and what he cannot do during his time off, and just the whole scenario of what his mission was to do, almost like to work for the British government to stop this dictator. It's just like obviously like you got to keep in mind this is kind of like a fictitious story with some real characters. So I think I don't know if like McAvoy's character is a compost character. Like I really don't know, but it's just the unique friendship that they would have throughout the movie is probably the best thing about the movie. But I just think Forrest Whit it's just not. I like Forrest Whitaker is really good, but it's just that that's more of a supporting performance, not much of a lead. And James McAvoy is actually really great in this film as well. I just don't know if it was like the writing in this film or McDonald's direct. I don't think it was McDonald's direction. I think it was the writing that just kind of didn't work for me. Starring Kate Winslet, which got her a Best Actress nomination, Patrick Wilson and Jackie Earle Haley, who got a Supporting Actor nomination, and it also got in for Adapted Screenplay. And this was like Todd Field's second and last film for a while until he made a comeback with Tar. I am putting this one in A. I really, really like this thriller of this romance between the two, of how happy these two characters end up becoming before, like, without not knowing their real life husband. Partners would be doing, but also the unique friendship, like how their kids are really having a great time, even though there is obviously this released potential killer that is obviously out of prison for the first time since he already finished his sentence, and obviously a lot of like okay, I don't know if it's a killer. I forget what he was, but I think he's like more of a. I don't know if it's like a creep to kids. I don't remember, but I know his character has a massive mental issue, of course, even after when he is released from prison. And obviously, when we get to his final scene with him and Winslet in like a little playground area during the climax, it's really, really heartfelt. Kate Winslet does a fantastic job with her performance here, and that was a great Best Actress lineup though. That's kind of really tough. I once again I have to really think about who would have been my personal winner in that 2006 lineup, but Winslet's really really great in that film. Actually, I think I might have my actual probably pick here. I guess. It definitely for adapted screenplay, yes. But it's Notes on a Scandal, which earned a adapted screenplay nomination, supporting actress nomination for Kate Blanchett in her lead performance, and a Best Actress nomination for Judi Dench. I am putting this one in S. I really love this movie. Of this whole scandal, obviously, of this fellow, I think it's a fellow teacher friend, or I forget, is she a principal or something like that? But finding out that one of her coworkers might be having this potential relationship with one of her students, art students to be precise, and then trying to also figure out because she really felt Dench's character really felt lonely and had a great connection with friendship with Blanchett's character, and then finding out this massive scandal, it really kind of hurts for her, and she doesn't even know what to do. Would she backstab her friend, or would she obviously do the right thing and call authorities to deal with? It is definitely one of the most unique stories, obviously, of a student-teacher relationship, and the way how Patrick Marber wrote that script was phenomenally well done. Definitely would have been my pick for adapted screenplay over The Departed. Now into Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth, which, like Amelie, obviously earned a bunch of nominations, including with the Tides being original screenplay, but it actually did win three in the technical categories for makeup and hairstyling, production design, and cinematography. But like Amelie, it lost the International Feature Oscar to The Lives of Others from Florian Henker von Dornersmarck. We'll talk about that film in the international ranking, but Pan's Labyrinth, obviously, very iconic fantasy film. I'm putting this one. It's been over 5 years since I've seen it. I think I saw it back in 2020, so it's been a long time since I've seen the movie. But I am gonna put this in A, but it would be like a very A minus. It's just finding out of who this like where of what Ophelia actually is during this war occurring in Spain, led by the evil um Sergio Lopez. Oh gosh, he is so very intense. And obviously, Ophelia's only massive connection is the maid played by Maribel Verdú, who was in Itama Matapian, who's also great. And obviously, Duck Jones, really fantastic job with, I think, also in the makeup department, but also his performance as this fantasy creature that obviously is telling Ophelia what to do in order to find out if she was the true princess or not in this magical fantasy thing. I can't really go into it because it's such an iconic film and probably what many people would say would be the first film you can think of when you think of Guillermo del Toro. I would say now for me would be The Shape of Water, of course. But yeah, this is another fantastic movie from him. Obviously, it's like um in terms of like his original, it man, that's kind of hard because he has a great filmography. Of course, I've not seen all of his movies, but definitely when you look at the criterion, what is supposed to be of his trilogy, I might put it in the middle of it, but Kronos and the Devil's Backbone I do prefer it over Pan's Labyrinth. I will be honest. Um, is it over Kronos? I might. It's been 5 years since I've seen Pan's Labyrinth, so I might have to rewatch it sometime in the near future to see how much I really loved it the first time when I saw it back in 2020. Next up is The Pursuit of Happiness, which is about Chris Gardner, played by Will Smith, and his son, who's actually played by Jaden Smith on his film debuted. And obviously, the struggling they're having of living kind of somewhat homeless in their life, while Chris is trying to become a successful businessman and trying to find a way to get into the positions that he wants to be in, that he cannot be able to, and he would end up doing that is while dealing with the relationship with his son. I am putting this one in A. This is a very heartwarming story between the two. Will Smith, I will be saying, this would have been my favorite performance that he has done out of his 3 Oscar nominations, and I think he would have been my vote in this one. I mean, the connection he obviously has with his son, not just obviously in real life, of course, but just specifically in their working together in this movie, really captivates a lot of what Will had to do in order to play the real life Chris Gardner, of how he also had the same relationship with his son during the real life story, of course. And it's really well captivated, very heartfelt, very emotional status. And even in the moments when obviously he was invited to see a football game, it's just when he's trying to convince many people, and then obviously what he has to do to impress a lot of people while he's doing some other business and stuff like that, and trying to sell some sort of I think some sort of egg cooker or something like that. I don't really remember, but like the moments when they can't really find like a homeless shelter or even have to sleep in a bathroom at a subway area for one night. It just really felt heartfelt that you have to see where Chris was at the time when during this real life story. Now we're into United 93, the from Paul Greengrass, which earned him a Best Director nomination. It also earned a Film Editing nomination. And the only movie about 9/11 that should exist. No other movie centering around 9/11, not even Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, should not exist. I know there are some TV documentaries, of course, like Inside Twin Towers, and obviously actual documentaries like National Geographic. But when it comes to like biopic movies about 9/11 or fictional movies about 9/11, United 93 is the only one that should exist. And without a doubt, it's S tier. I was with me obviously knowing a little bit of the knowledge about 9/11 from me, because I did not know 9/11 until 2011. Like I was 1 years old when the event occurred, and I did not know about it until 10 years later. And obviously, this movie really captivates the overlooked aspect of the event, not just specifically with the fourth plane with the passengers inside United 93, as well as the hijackers led by Ziad Jarrah, which also obviously kind of in real life, if you've seen the National Geographic documentary, Ziad might have a bit of innocence with himself because obviously with how he almost kind of grown fondness in the American when he was not supposed to, obviously during his time in America throughout the late 90s, at least throughout the year 2000, during his time. I'm in preparation for the hijack, but specifically also with the relationship with his Turkish wife that he had met in, I believe, in Germany during his time in his studies. Obviously, that doesn't really focus a lot because it just starts up when at the airport when they're in there. But you kind of see the innocence of Ziad throughout the movie as well, even during his time when before the plane was hijacked. But it also goes into as well all the air traffic controllers, especially NEOTs in Rome, New York, of their perspective of what was going on. Because obviously we know about the first three attacks, of course, obviously American 11 and United 175 and American 77. And obviously the main focus is, of course, United Airlines Flight 93. Of course, the plane that was supposed to either crash into either the White House or the U.S. Capitol building, which ended up, of course, crashing into a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, after when the passengers risked their lives to try to get back in the plane to take it back so they can control it. But obviously, of course, it they obviously did not make it, but they managed to save an historic landmark in the U.S. Capitol building or the White House. But obviously, they were kind of like the first true, other than those evacuators, the real life heroes inside the Twin Towers in '77 that tried to get a lot of people out. That was not a firefighter as well. Um, I know, like in the Twin Towers, have you seen like people who work at the Twin Towers, of course, went on to help other civilians in the towers to risk their lives, but also the passengers do. Yeah, and also one thing I really did loved about this was the music, the score specifically, and especially when the crashes occurred. Especially when we saw the footage of the South, obviously the real life news footage for the when the South Tower was hit. Instead of hearing the crash noise, it's just the score piece that does it, and then you just hear the people's reaction to it inside the control towers. Like no sound of explosion sounds whatsoever, and that was a very creative choice. And one thing that is also very creative is the casting in this film. And I can tell you, if the casting category was existent in the 2000s, I definitely think this would have been definitely a nomination because this is an ensemble with not like no big A-list actors in this entire cast. A lot of these are just actors who had done small roles, whether it be on the theater or stage or television, that had experience seeing the event live and just obviously had to recreate a moment that they didn't want to do, especially for those who had to play the passengers in the United 93. Probably the most notable cast member of the entire movie is Cheyenne Jackson, who done a couple of Broadway roles, such as in All Shook Up, Vinian's Rainbow, and Xanadu, and also one of the stars in the Disney Channel Descendants film series. He is the most notable cast member, I would say, in the entire film. He played one of the main four guys that made the vote to take back United 93. Well, that's the notable, I would say, the most notable cast member of the entire film. So, yeah, if the casting was created, this definitely would have been a nomination. Would have win? I would say that probably would have been Little Miss Sunshine because of Abigail Breslin, I guess. So that could be a different scenario, but this definitely would have been an all-timer casting nomination. It definitely would have been a great all-timer Best Picture nomination. I know some people are not comfortable, might not be comfortable watching this movie because, yeah, it's not a very easy movie to get through. The only thing that prevented it from getting to becoming, I would say, a masterpiece is that I really wish we did went back more into the air traffic controllers during the time when United 93 was hijacked to see what their perspectives were during the time when the passengers were calling their loved ones and obviously finding out what was going on. And I wanted to see what the air traffic controllers were making the decision whether or not to send military personnel to try to find the plane or even try to take it down. If you've seen the Inside 9/11 documentary from National Geographic, people were talking about this. So a lot of air traffic control, specifically in military, were trying to make this decision or not. And obviously, we would not know what happened after they found out when it ended up landing, or specifically being down. Excuse me, do apologize on that. But yeah, it is a very realistic movie and probably one of the most important films, one of the most important biopics I would say of the 2000s that really stood the test of time. All right, now we're into Venus, from which is the final Oscar nomination for Peter O'Toole, which earned him a Best Actor nomination. Uh, I don't remember much of this movie. It's not something that pissed me off, but I had to put this in E just because I don't remember anything about this movie other than just like one physical fight that occurred at a little restaurant with him and Leslie Phillips. I believe that's it. We're just trying to reminiscent about like I don't know with a younger, not a romantic way with a younger woman neighbor. I don't remember what this character does, and it's just like when a movie is so very forgetful, you just don't know what to talk about. So yeah, that's kind of the basic summary of my thoughts on this quick summary about Venus. Because yeah, I just don't think that nomination's not probably the best final nomination for his career. I think there would have been another movie that would have been a better final nomination for him, even though he just received like an honorary Oscar in just like a few years before this film. And finally, for 2006, we have Pedro Almodovar's Vivar, which, although did got shortlisted, it missed the international feature nomination. So like Spain did submit it, but it missed the nomination. But Penelope Cruz did earn her first Oscar nomination for Best Actress. And if you've seen the Oscar nomination announcement, Salma Hayek, who is very close friends with Penelope Cruz, was excited when she got the nomination. I am putting this one in I'm gonna put this one in A because, but it would be a minus A. This is a Almodovar who I actually did like. Um, not as strong as his three other films I had talked about from that he did prior to Talk to Her, like specifically Woman on the Verge, Tie Me Up, and All About My Mother. But this is definitely, I think, my favorite Oscar-nominated Almodovar movie of the 20th century so far. I really loved what she has to do of trying to reconnect with not just specifically like with her I believe with her mother, long lost mother, of course, that she thought she was dead, but also obviously dealing with other things, including running this restaurant that almost close by her apartment, and then it's just like kind of a very struggling life after when she found out that her mother actually was not dead at all, and trying to reminisce about the relationship between with her and her mother, and then obviously with her other family members while also dealing like I think financial problems as well, even while dealing with this restaurant position, of course, which she does. So yeah, it's kind of everyone, but Cruz does a fantastic job with her performance in this one. Definitely my favorite Oscar nomination from Penelope Cruz, easily out of the four nominations. Yeah, in one of the best actress lineups. Like I said, I would have to really think about which one would have been my personal pick for 2006. It might be either Judi Dench or Kate Winslet. It's like that's a really strong lineup, regardless of who is, because yeah, because if I'm correct, yeah, because Vivar, even though Vivar notes on the scanner are higher, but the other performances are just fantastic. Oh man, that's gonna be a lot of time to thinking about. Now we're into 2007, and let's see if any of these movies were better than any of the Best Picture nominees. Because I think for me, 2007 was one of probably, if not the weakest Best Picture lineup in the Oscars history. Even though of this century so far, I would say not in history, but definitely of the century, because it was just average of to okay at best. Like not F tier, but like up to at least C tier. So hopefully any of these other films could potentially top it over. But let's see how that goes, and even potentially for a future 2007 personal lineup, but that would also include the documentary, animated, international films, with the exception of one animated film that we'll be talking here. And even though there are two non-English films in this, but they did not got international feature nomination. So we'll start this up with Ridley Scott's American Gangster, which earned a supporting actress nomination for Ruby Dee, her only nomination of her career, and she even won the Screen Actors Guild Award in that intense supporting actress race that year. I don't remember a single thing other than like that, so I have to give it an E. It's like not terrible or anything, but just I don't remember how the story of Frank Lucas and the whole gangster thing goes with Russell Crowe's character trying to catch Denzel Washington's character, which is Frank Lucas. I don't really know. It's just like kind of like not really I almost feel like the typical gangster movie where you just have to like you follow the main gangster leader and then obviously the like the head police officer that's head of the case, and then yada yada yada. You kind of know when that kind of goes, even though this is kind of a biopic. Speaking of biopics of like more about investigation, here's The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, which earned a supporting actor nomination for Casey Affleck. Some say he's leading, but after seeing the movie, I can see why he went supporting because this is kind of more of an ensemble piece. Like, not him or Brad Pitt are the leads of this film. Yeah, I'm gonna also have to give this an E as well, just because it's kind of very bland and boring. Honestly, it's just like there's not really much into the build up to the assassination or like if they did it more of at a quicker pace, because this is coming from the guy who would later do another Oscar nominee, Andrew Dominic, that's who he is, who would do another movie when we get into the fifth part of this tier list. I might go back to this film over that other film, but it's just that it's very, very forgetful. It really takes its time too slowly to get into the main event, and then obviously what happens afterwards, and just like obviously this was a true story, so I just can't really justify what it was. Now we're into Away from Her from Sarah Polley, which earned an adapted screenplay nomination for her and a Best Actress nomination for Julie Christie. Her most recent and probably her last Oscar nomination. She won an Oscar back in the 60s for Darling, beating Julie Andrews in The Sound of Music, because Andrews won the previous year for Mary Poppins. Um, yeah, this movie really blew me away of how the use of dementia is told throughout this movie on the adaptation. I have to get this an S. I really love this movie. Um, the way how both the relationship between Fiona and Grant, who are of course played by Joey Christie, and Gordon Pinsett, who you might know him more as the voice of Babar, obviously the King Elvin as the adult, of course, on the hit animated series. Um, yeah, this was probably the closest thing for the real life Babar to get an Oscar nomination because he was so fantastic. And obviously, not also just dealing with Fiona's dementia, and her getting the obviously of her where she goes from one completely different person to a completely different person after what happens when she meets somebody else who is also suffering dementia with a relationship. But like this kind of also really goes into the relationship they have, and you really feel sorry for both of them, especially Grant, on where his wife is at that time when she goes into the facility where they keep all the Alzheimer's and dementia people at. And it just like you really feel sorry. And this is just so incredibly phenomenal job from Sarah Polley's direction and writing, and with the performances from both Pinsett and Christie. They really did a phenomenal job in this, and I do think this is probably my favorite film of how they told the story through dementia and Alzheimer's. Now we're into the final film from Mike Nichols, Charlie Wilson's War, starring Tom Hanks, Julia Roberts, and earned a supporting actor nomination for Philip Seymour Hoffman. I am putting this one in. I'm gonna put this in B, but it would be a B plus. I really like how the whole story of how Charlie really become one of the most iconic, one of the few heroes during a little bit during the Cold War era of what he does with at the same time with not really much. It's kind of hard because I don't remember much of this movie, but it was really really good, and this is mainly because of the performances from Hanks, Julia Roberts, and Philip Seymour Hoffman. Philip Seymour Hoffman did had a decent year, but I do think this was probably the right nomination for him over his other film that he starred in as a lead. When we'll get into who, um, yeah, it just really stood out in a lot of the acting showcase of what Charlie had to do, and even trying to go and intervene with some of the other people that do not want them to do it in order to save some people during this time. I might be wrong what I'm saying here, but it's been a while. Once again, I don't know. I don't know how many times I will be saying throughout this entire video. You could almost make a drinking game with saying how many times it's been a while since I've seen this movie. It does take a bit, but when you have to watch so many movies here, like how many more movies I still have here, you can see right there. It is still kind of very ironic to see how many you have to go through in order to remember stuff. But I do remember really liking this movie. Definitely, Tom Hanks would have gotten a good Best Actor nomination and maybe adapted screenplay. So yeah, this was a pretty good swan song for Mike Nichols' career as a filmmaker. Now we're into The Diving Bell and the Butterfly from Julian Schnabel, which almost got into Best Picture as it got in for directing for Schnabel, adapted screenplay, as well as cinematography and film editing like City of God. The massive difference, of course, is unlike City of God, The Diving Bell and the Butterfly was ineligible for international feature. Even though it was made in France, it was a collaboration between France and the U.S. And this is actually a post Weinstein Miramax movie. So yeah, 2007 post Weinstein Miramax was at its golden peak. That was they did without their former leader. So well done on them. But I think this would have been my pick for the best Miramax 2007 movie. I am putting The Diving Bell and the Butterfly in S. I really loved how this movie was well shot, well directed, telling the real life story of this famous French guy who had this long recovery from a massive stroke he had, and the way how he only has to connect it while doing this stuff at the first start of the glance of him, while he only has to blink with one of his eyes throughout the entire journey. And this is really credit to the cinematography of going through the perspective of his eye through when you see some of the faces of some of the other characters, and then when we go into like the back scenes when he was where he was before his stroke, around the time when he had kind of this romantic affair and the relationship with his kids and what he was doing prior to it, and then also the entire recovery stage, and only have to learn to specifically in order for you to understand like a scene where he has to go through each letters. He just has like you have to almost say like like for an example, when I say A B C D E, like obviously this is in French alphabetized, but like for an Americanized, you would go A B C D E F. Like if somebody when I would say something like when I go to H and then he blinks, then you have to kind of like write like each letter in order for him what he's actually trying to say, and then that is really like obviously this is a real story, of course, but like the entire the actors who play the medical team, especially the one who helps him with the letters and stuff like that, that's really fantastic acting. And even from Mathieu Amalric, who plays the main character, of the transformation he had to do, and even all the scenes prior to it, that was a very he should have gotten in for best actor. That would have been a great nomination, and definitely would have been a good makeup and hairstyling nomination, but definitely worthy of the other categories, especially the cinematography and directing nomination. Now into Eastern Promises. This is David Cronenberg's other movie, involving around kind of gangsters, I would say, and this did earn Viggo Mortensen a Best Actor nomination for him not getting in for History of Violence. This is probably the one of the Cronenberg movies I did not like, not that like, but kind of bland. So it has to go into E. It's just very forgetful, I will say. I think the only thing I just remember is like the setting of the restaurant, and that could be just it. And maybe with Mortensen dealing with this woman throughout this journey, I don't really remember this. It's just very forgetful compared to some of the Cronenberg's other movies. Like, yeah, I have yet to see like Compliance. I did saw The Shrouds. I even remember a bit of more of The Shrouds, more so than Eastern Promises. So that's kind of saying something. But yeah, I think A History of Violence easily is the better Cronenberg Mortensen gangster movie over Eastern Promises. Next up is Elizabeth the Golden Age, the sequel to the 1998 film that earned a Best Picture nomination. And before I get into the Golden Age, I just want to say I actually ended up really liking the first Elizabeth movie. That kind of really surprised me of how much I really enjoyed it, from the story, from the performance, from the direction, to especially the performances from both Kate Blanchett and Jeffrey Rush. I mean, that movie was phenomenally well done. The Golden Age, on the other hand, was a bit of a disappointment. I have to give it yeah, I have to give it a D. Like I know it would be more like an E standard, but yeah, I was kind of really disappointed, and I can see why critics were very mixed with it, because it just like it was missing something throughout the movie. I think because since I think it had a different director in this film, unlike the original film. So unless if I'm mistaken, I could be wrong, or is it like the writing's off? Like Blanchett is there as Elizabeth, and even Jeffrey Rush's character, who plays a close ally to Queen Elizabeth. But it obviously kind of focuses like a bit on more like I think like war aspects and relationship status, and even with all the relationships with the other countries and all the other lords. It's just like that's not what the first Elizabeth really meant for Elizabeth herself, especially throughout the first movie, because that was kind of the issue, is that it was missing something. I don't know if it was like because it was trying to be more lighthearted instead of being more serious. That was kind of a bit of a disappointment for me. I really wanted to hopefully he find this underrated gem, but no, I kind of agree with the critics. It's really, really disappointing. Now we're into Gone Baby Gone, which is actually directed by Ben Affleck. This was like before he did Argo in the Town, he did Gone Baby Gone. Stars his brother Casey Affleck, Morgan Freeman, and Amy Ryan, which earned a Best Supporting Actress nomination. And she won a Critics' Choice. I am giving this one a D. I really do enjoy the concept of the idea of obviously this officer who is actually also in love with another officer, like specifically trying to figure out this missing child case. And then obviously when it comes to the big revealment, it kind of has some massive problems you have to deal with because the way how her mother, the mother obviously is kind of more like a very not the typical mother, but like I would say not like drug addicted or alcohol addicted, but like a single mother that's almost like a little bit too young that doesn't have much experience or stuff like that. Or like I wouldn't say like southern wise, but it just like kind of like sassy moms, single mothers. I would say I think that's the best way to explain it about Amy Ryan's performance. Yeah, but like when you know what direction's kind of going, it kind of really goes a bit downhill. So the case is really interesting, and obviously how the big sum up real comes all into the massive climax. But then obviously with Affleck's relationships he has with each of the characters, especially with his partner girlfriend, and obviously with the mother who wants her child back, you can see there are some issues. And then the ending, I really do like the ending and how it ends. It just really kind of has this unique connection that there could be something that could happen afterwards, but obviously it doesn't. Where he's just with the kid that obviously um, was missing, and I won't go much into it, but it's just like one of the best, a really good ending. But I just really think it just didn't work well in like the typical format that you might have seen in other movies. I know I kind of mentioned about Bob Dylan a bit in Walk the Line because here is a other Bob Dylan movie, and that is I'm Not There from Todd Haynes, which earned a supporting actress nomination for Kate Blanchett. Uh, I think I'm gonna have to put this in E, but it would be a very high E. It just like I get the scenario of what this idea was, and Oren Moverman, who was the writer of the film, who actually directed a 2009 movie that we'll get into in a few minutes, a couple of minutes, excuse me. It just, I think, I don't know why I think I like the concept of each of having a different scenario of somebody portraying a different version of Bob Dylan. Even Blanchett does it. It just, like, I just, like, you start up with a kid and well, you have like Arthur Rimbaud, you had Woody Guthrie, Jack Rowlands and Father John, Robbie Clark, Jude Quinn, Billy McCarthy, like kind of almost like the main aspect inspirations for Bob Dylan, but it's just like it's very very like not really confusing, but like it's not I do give the creativity of what it was doing, but I think it just failed on it on a maybe dialogue or acting or directing wise movie. It's just like it just didn't work for me, honestly. Next up is In the Valley of Eli, Paul Haggis' follow up to Crash, which earned Tommy Lee Jones a Best Actor nomination, since he couldn't get in for leading for No Country for Old Men, because that's a supporting performance, of course. I am putting this one in A. I actually think this is a very underrated film that should have got a lot more recognition. Yeah, I know a lot of people hated Haggis' film Crash, but I think this would have been the better movie he could have got a lot of respect for because this is a really great investigation of this um, man trying to figure out the death of his military son who was killed, but it could be potentially not in a military area, but instead an action line where the police can actually take the investigation instead of the military. And obviously, with him bringing this female officer, of course, played by Charlize Theron, and who is also a single mother, trying to figure out the situation of the case while also seeing the difficult situation she has a bit in her personal life. But obviously, of course, um, obviously Tommy Lee Jones's character is really trying to find the man who had, or the people who betrayed or killed his son. In the not really in the line of duty, but like when they were off duty, specifically at a military base, like somewhere near around the area, of course. So and I really love the whole investigation of it. And there were some nice moments when it kind of takes its time off for the investigation, like obviously understanding where Theron is as a single mother and dealing with her son's issues. And obviously, there's not really much going on with obviously Lee Jones's relationship with his wife, of course, which I'm glad they didn't want much into it, other than like who is played by Susan Sarandon. It's just obviously she just has to deal with like not being there, obviously to see what happened with her son, and more specifically a secret package that came in from them that she kind of wants to open, but obviously she has to wait until like when he gets in, and then we finally kind of see what it is at the ending, and very somber, I will say. But it does leave into some aspects of also with Tommy Lee Jones's character forgiving some people, but also finding out who had actually done the betrayal after we kind of figure out who it is. So yeah, that's also creative, not just the writing. And Charlize Theron gives a very great performance, a very overlooked performance. I can see some people might view her leading or supporting, but the story kind of is more about Tommy Lee Jones's character. So going by the story, I would say Theron's kind of supporting, but I can see some people might view her as a lead. So that's where I would stand. But yeah, a very underrated film. This should have got a lot more recognition. It's just that with Crash's Best Picture win, it got a lot of hate from Paul Haggis. So, but yeah, this movie should have got a lot more recognition than it did. Now Into the Wild, the famous story of Christopher McCandless, who basically is famous after he graduated college, abandoned his entire family to make on a cross-country road journey across the U.S., ending his time in a bus in Alaska. I remembered hearing about the story a bit throughout during one of my English disc class in high school, but I didn't see the movie until like a year or two ago. And this is actually also directed by Sean Penn, by the way. One of the few times an actor has directed a movie. I am putting this one in C. There are actually a lot of great elements throughout this road journey of where Christopher was before he went to Alaska, with the unique connections he had with a lot of the characters, especially with some unique friendships, like with this somewhat hippie kind of a family, with one of them played by Catherine Keener, who's fantastic in this, and this like young girl played by Kristen Stewart. Yes, like a late early teen played by Stewart, and this was I think was it the same year the Twilight came out? So yeah, oh gosh, yes it did. Oh boy, what a year that she had, starring in both Into the Wild and Twilight. Oh gosh, but I think a lot of people might remember her, even though Twilight's the most iconic movie franchise role, but Into the Wild might be the better acclaimed movie she was in. But obviously, I put it in C. It's just like when we get to like a lot of his scenes in Alaska, I can understand. Obviously, this is a true story, but and there are some good aspects to it. But I just think um, there might be like the relationship with his family and all the back scenes we have, and trying to figure out why he abandoned them is kind of a bit of a question mark for me. But I really do enjoy some of the road moments, like yeah, but it's just it. I think it might be a pacing issue, or and obviously some other connections. This earned a supporting actor nomination for Hal Holbrook. I think his scenes are fine. I think that could be another reason why I might have put it in C. It also earned a film editing nomination. I don't think I wouldn't have gone with that, but yeah, there are some other characters he would not had. But like there are some heartwarming moments, like when Christopher with would go on a little mountain hike with Hal Holbrook's character a bit in a little mountain. So that was kind of pretty one of the more heartwarming moments. There are some memorable scenes, but it's just a movie, and I not really know what to come back to. But it's just like there are some good moments, but there are some really survival moments that you don't really want to see again on the screen. Now into Lars and the Real Girl from Nancy Oliver, which earned an original screenplay nomination. Ryan Gosling kind of relationship with this uh, uh, like not real. I would say balloon doll. I would say of a girl. It's just weird. I'm gonna have to give this one. I'm gonna give it a D, but it would be a D minus. Um, like yeah, it seems weird at first glance. But yeah, and there are some actually pretty good scenes in the movie, and Emily Mortimer does give another great performance here as uh the sister in Lars' sister in law, because Lars is kind of living in the garage of his brother's house, and his wife is a big supporter of trying to get Lars into the public domain a bit, and having this unique balloon girlfriend is just something, and then the entire community comes around to do it. It seems very interesting. I just think it's Gosling's performance that could be the issue for me. First half Nelson, then this. It's just like I don't think he doesn't do well in comedies. I would say, even though you can even say the same thing maybe with Barbie, but at least I would prefer his performance in Barbie over Half Nelson and Larson the Real Girl. Yeah, so the story I can see why it got that screenplay nomination, but I think it and I can see the good use of the dialogue. It's just I think Gosling's performance might have captivated me from a bit. Now we're into La Vie en Rose, the French biopic on Edith Piaf, which won Best Actress for Marion Cotillard. It also won for makeup and hairstyling and was nominated for costume design. It wasn't, ironically enough, France did not submit the film for international feature, though, which is pretty odd. I am putting this one in A. I really, really did like the story of this famous singer, of what she was doing at throughout her time, and also with the health issues. And I kind of figure out who she was, of what song she actually did sing. After when I saw the ending, it's like, oh, she did that song. Okay, then. I know what it is, but I don't want to sing it because I might end up getting pronunciation wrong. But Marion Cotillard absolutely killed it. She definitely deserved that Oscar win for Best Actress easily, even though Julie Christie was a close second. But yeah, Cotillard really killed the role as Edith Piaf. Definitely one of the better music biopics of a famous person. Of just all the journey goes from the very bottom all the way up to the top, not just around in France, but of course when she goes over to the U.S. Obviously, even though she's in the U.S., but it's primarily all in French still. She still speaks in French even when she goes to the U.S., so that was pretty creative. Like, barely English, I don't think they don't do much in the movie, so like, I think that was maybe accurate, but that really kind of really captivates how French cinema really does. Well directed, although I would say it's a little, not too long, but there should be a little bit portions of the movie that should have been taken out to make it a little bit more of a neater pacer, not as a long movie, but it still really works well. Yeah, Cotillard just really killed the performance, and I think with her in the direction and the story of knowing who this woman was and all the health she would have even after when she gets a bit older, really captivates. And of course, even when we go into the future scenes during her final years of what was going on, yeah, that's the thing. It kind of does kind of go into a not in a linear format, but it's kind of like what Orrin Moverman would do in Love and Mercy, the Brian Wilson biopic, where there would be specific periods, like two periods, but it would go in a linear format, but it would go back to back. And I think there are three linear narratives in La Vie en Rose where to go back to back, like in her early years, her mid years, and even during her final years. And we just kind of finally understand like why she really wanted to be that famous. Like not much of it. Almost like she kind of had like a bit of an ego, but not really saying it to the public. She just knows she has it in herself. All right, now we are getting into Ratatouille. I don't think this needs any explanation for me, but yeah, it's this and another film from Pixar. This is one of my two all-time favorite Pixar movies. I mean, not because for me having a bias towards food or anything like that, but just wow, the way Brad Bird made this movie is like a true masterpiece in Pixar's work. Definitely one of the best animated films of this century. It's just like this feels like more of a very like how un Disney it is compared to a lot of the and like this almost feels like legit more of a legit independent film that Pixar made on their own. And that's what Brad Bird did, of course. Obviously, this one animated feature, its highest was original screenplay, and yeah, the idea of a concept of a rat cooking in a restaurant in Paris seems a bit odd, but of course, as a family movie, it just really works well with this rat who had really admired the chef and how the motto "anyone can cook" is basically the big thing. Is yeah, not everyone can cook, or can become a great artist, as Anton Ego, played by Peter O'Toole, which I think would have been a better final Oscar nomination for him just because of the final monologue he did on Anton Ego's review of the film. Um, but yeah, Patton Oswalt's fantastic choice as Remy because Brad Bird just basically casted him after reading a stand-up bit on the Black Angus Steakhouse, I believe that's what it was. And just a stand-up bit on food just makes him be the cast of a rat to cook. That's just a pretty creative casting choice, I would say, from Pixar or from Brad Bird specifically, of choosing somebody like Patton Oswalt to do that. And that's probably his most famous thing he has done other than just stand up and narrating in the television series The Goldbergs. But it's easily his famous film role he has ever done. I really wish this movie would have been a great Criterion Collection idea, but since Pixar, if I'm correct, Disney is legit making a sequel to this, which I'm not really looking forward to. I don't know why. I mean, I don't know what you can do with it, but I'm very curious. But yeah, it's just like I didn't had a couple of days ago did rewatch a couple of some of my favorite scenes in the movie, and just involving around the cooking aspect, of course, whether it be when we get into Gusto's for the first time, or the special order, or when Remy makes the soups, or obviously the big climax with the final dinner to impress Ego. And I really did enjoy the ending, of course. All the characters are really memorable. Skinner is just really fun villain. And Ego's a really great antagonist critic, and but that was a great casting choice from Peter O'Toole in one of his in his legit. I think this was maybe his legit final film role he had done. Well, not one of his final films, I would say, but yeah, that definitely would have been a great final Oscar nomination if voice performances are eligible. I'm not really sure, but if that was, that would have been definitely a great final nomination for him just because of his monologue. I already repeat that, but yeah, it's just like everything is just a massive, great cuisine, I would say, for the movie. No pun intended. Uh, but yeah, it's one of my two old-timer favorite Pixar films. Now into The Savages from Tamara Jenkins, starring Philip Seymour Hoffman and Laura Linney. It got an actress nomination for Linney and an original screenplay, although Hoffman did get an actor and a Golden Globe nomination for actor in a comedy or musical at the Golden Globes, excuse me, but didn't get a Best Actor nomination. So he could have almost got nominated for leading and supporting the same year like Kate Blanchett did. Yeah, Blanchett got a Best Actress nomination for Elizabeth the Golden Age. It's just as well as I'm not there, but that didn't work for Philip Seymour Hoffman. I'm giving this one. I think I'm gonna have to give this an. Yeah, I'll put it an F, but it would be an F plus. It's just the thing is, I think this is also not a great portrayal. I think it's not a great portrayal of dementia or something like that. Away From Her did it way much better. And it's just like the one who plays, obviously, their father is just. Like, it's not blaming the actor, and that was, I think, his final film role, but I just think maybe the dialogue or just the portrayal of dementia or Alzheimer's in this movie is just doesn't work compared to Away From Her. So, yeah, like, I get it, this is kind of a comedy, I get it, but just the way how they had decided to put their father in this nursing home compared to what Sarah Polley did with Away From Her is just yeah. If you do a battle between Away From Her and The Savages, Away From Her easily would have taken it because of Polley's writing, direction, and the performances. While in The Savages, Tamara Jenkins' direction, writing, and the performances just no. Yeah, Away From Her easily would have taken the win for me. And finally, from 2007, we have Tim Burton's film. Yeah, I can't believe I'm doing a Tim Burton film here. With Sweeney Todd, The Demon Barber of Fleet Street, which earned Johnny Depp his third and latest Oscar nomination, which in case was for Best Actor, and also one for production design, because every time a Tim Burton movie is nominated in that category, it wins, although it has not happened since his remake of Alice in Wonderland. I know this has been a massive fan favorite, both not just on stage, but also this is many people consider to be one of Burton's best movies of this century. But I'm gonna have to put this in D. I do get the whole concept. Like, he obviously does want this massive revenge on like the woman who was taken away from him or from this high government. It's just like, and obviously how what he does with this, obviously this crazy cake lady played by Helena Bonham Carter, who obviously is really in love with this crazy barber. And then just obviously dealing with this kid, of course, as well. It's just like, and obviously with the crazy old woman that's around the area, and we will not know until what happens at the end. But it's just like, Oh gosh, and even I think they have also a connection with his Sweeney Todd's mother, I believe, also in this movie. I don't remember, but it's been a while since I've seen this movie. Oh, there it goes again. Yeah, it's just like I get the concept, but I just think maybe it just I don't know if it was miscasted. Was it Burden? I don't think like Burden was the decent director to do it, but I don't know if he should have just gotten other actors instead of the actors he usually works with, like Depp and Bob McCarter, of course. Yeah, if it was completely two different actors, or if the music was in a different tone, I think this would have been a better Oscar nomination movie. Like this won the Golden Globe for Motion Picture Musical or Comedy, I believe. So yeah, I would not even put it anywhere like in my personal lineup for 2007. So sorry, folks. Now we're into 2008, and we are going to begin this up with Clint Eastwood's Changeling, starring Angelina Jolie, and I am giving this one an A. I really like the this whole real story about what Christy Collins does in the search for her missing son, and how the police in around the area, what they do is just like paying the consequences of the woman. They think that it's all a conspiracy theory, and they think it's all this mental health institutes from these sexist police officers, I would say, and police force in general. Which I probably would like. This is like one of the fewest movies that really great movies that does make you very angry of what happened back in those days of what these men did to the women. Like, and this is not just even during like this was like even during the women's rights era and stuff like that. You really feel very sorry for Christine of what happened to her son after not also she was just went missing, but when the police decided to replace her son with somebody else, it's just like very unfortunate. And then what happens next of her massive battle of trying to make sure that all these police officers who did her wrong and all the other innocent women in this extreme dangerous mental facility, it just really frustrates you of what how bad women were treated at the time, and that was just very unfortunate. And she is one of the bigger supportive movements during like either was this like during the I don't think this was during the Roaring Twenties, was it? Like almost like right in 1928. Like this was like I think right before the Great Depression. I think almost began. So that's very unfortunate. Jolie really captivates the performance. She did a really fantastic job on that. All right, let's get into the film that was one of the two films specifically from 2008 that was infamously missed out of the Best Picture lineup because they went with the Oscar baitness with the Weinstein favorites with Reader, Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight. Oh boy. So let me start up giving my thoughts a bit on Batman Begins. I actually really like the Batman. That's Batman Begins specifically a great different origin story of the Cape Crusader. You might have noticed if you've seen one of my older Blu-ray collection videos, I end up getting the Dark Knight trilogy box set. As for the movie in general, it is going to be. I will say it's not going to an S or double S tier. I will say that. I'm gonna probably put this. Some people are not gonna like this, but I'm gonna put it in B. But it would be a very high B. It would be B plus, just on the edge of an A minus. I think it's just that there are some other characters in the movie that I don't really have fun. It's like the action's great. Obviously, I don't need any explanation about Heath Ledger's Joker. That's basically its own thing. I think that needs no any talking about that one. But yeah, no one really directed this movie. I still probably prefer Batman Begins as my favorite of the trilogy. It's way better than Dark Knight Rises easily. Um, because I did knew a little predictable moment, but The Dark Knight is definitely a good follow up. But I probably do prefer Batman Begins over The Dark Knight. I'm sorry to say that, but it is a great. All the action is fantastic in this. Christian Bale really gives an all in on his Batman role. Gary Oldman's fantastic in this. Maggie Gyllenhaal, an interesting, different casting replacement for who would be Bruce's love interest in this movie. I forget who the original one was in the first film, but yeah, like I know a lot of people are not gonna like that. I don't have it on A or S or double S, but at least it's in the positivity. But it's like I said, it's like almost like an 89%, or I would say 90%. Like if it was like 91, I would have put it in A. Like it would have been an A minus. So yeah, I know some people are not gonna like where I put it, but it is still a good movie. It's just that this is not a Batman film I would go back to. I would actually go and watch Matt Reeves' The Batman. I've not seen Tim Burton's film, so I can't really say anything about that. Definitely over the Lego Batman movie, I will say. Not seen the DC Extended Universe, and I don't think I want to. So, so they do this whole Spider-Man No Way Home scenario for them, but they can't obviously do that anymore. And I do even prefer it over Mask of the Phantasm, but yeah, it's not that overrated. It just I think it's a little bit too much. Like it's not my superhero bias or anything like that. I'm not really against. It's just that just when you compare it to a lot of the movies that came out in 2008, it just really depends on where it is, and especially when you just compare it to all the movies from this century. Next up is Doubt. Oh boy, this adaptation of the John Patrick Shanley play that was written and directed by him on and this just it's just Meryl Streep, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Amy Adams, and Viola Davis in a very small role. Wow, a bit of a questionable pre-sexual abuse story at a school with a potential friendship between a priest and one of the students, an African student, American student, by the way, who might be not been mistreated or bullied, and the priest really, well, I won't get into it, but you might know the scenario. But it's whether or not if it's true or not, we even still do not know. And obviously, with the head nun, who is the head principal of the school, who's played by Ship, she is really taking itself seriously. I am putting Doubt in A. It is really fantastically well written, directed, and acted by John Patrick Shanley and our main three actors. It's just really well done. Is because it still obviously brings up the massive question of whether he did it or not. Kind of like with Anatomy of a Fall, whether Sandra killed her husband or not. We do not know if Philip Seymour Hoffman, who plays the police, sexually abused the kid or not. We are not really 100% sure on it. And still leaves us questions, but it also kind of does show like a lot of obviously bad results that could occur with a priest being relocated instead of being behind bars or stuff like that. Obviously, what we would see in films like Spotlight, where they would really call it out more so after it even won the Oscar for Best Picture. And obviously, priest sex abuse is definitely a bit of a modern problem when it comes to the Catholic Church, of course. And we're even still waiting on a potential next line of a sexual abuse crisis whenever the New York grand jury comes out on their pre-sex abuse scandal. So of all the Catholic dioceses in the state of New York, so that's going to be something we'll have to find out whenever that will be released, because I know it did had affected here in Pennsylvania back in 2018, which started the third sex abuse scandal wave, I would say, or third sex abuse crisis, I would say. First was Boston, then Los Angeles, and then Pennsylvania with the McCarrick scandal, and now probably the fourth crisis will be on New York State. So we'll see that. But it is a very fantastic movie. Another movie I think has really aged. One thing I really wish they would have done in the ending, like I would have loved to see, even though I don't think this was in the original play that John Patrick Shanley did, but I would have loved to seen a scene with our main nun, who is played by Streep, meeting with the bishop who runs that specific diocese and kind of confronting like talking about the like this massive discussion between the two at the end of the film after of this relocation of the priest, instead of having him like doing criminal charges or anything like that, and then the bishop's is almost kind of like protecting him and not much of the children. Like I would have loved to seen a massive confrontation of the nun really criticizing the bishop of what he is doing instead of doing the right way instead of the wrong. But obviously, because the bishop wouldn't have focused more on his religion more so than the human life. So I really wish there would have been a scene like that. If there was, I was going in blind, by the way, when I was seeing this film. So if that would have been, I would have considered that a masterpiece. But since it didn't happen, I do put it in A. But it would be very close to S tier. Next up is Frozen River from Courtney Hunt. I forgot to mention Changeling got a Best Actress nomination. Daup got the four acting nominations in Screenplay. And by the way, it was the most nominated film of the Golden Globes, with one of the most nominated films of that year to receive 0 acting nominations. That's without getting the motion picture drama category. Excuse me. Frozen River got Best Actress for Melissa Leo and Original Screenplay for Courtney Hunt. I am putting this one in B. I really like this whole story of this mother having to deal into working with these immigrants, like to actually, I think either bring, I forget what they were bringing, other migrants or other substances to bring in from Canada back to the United States through a special river across that is like an icy river, to get all the what they have to do. And she really has to fall in this massive conflict for her because between her life and what she is doing is absolutely wrong. And Leo and Courtney Hunt's writing, and I forget who the supporting female of the one who plays the main immigrant that we do follow with the main journey throughout the movie. She really did a fantastic job here. I can see that's a great nomination for its screenplay. I really do like that original screenplay nomination. That was pretty inspired. Um, Leo is obviously pretty good. Definitely her better nomination than her win for The Fighter, without a doubt. But yeah, this is definitely one of the better stories of like dealing with immigration issues, especially with if it's being illegal and how it's portrayed in the movies. Now is Mike Leigh's Happy Go Lucky, which earned an original screenplay nomination, but infamously, Sally Hawkins did not get nominated for Best Actress. This is one of my hit or misses with Mike Leigh. I have to put this in E. I just don't remember a single thing about this movie other than just like a classroom, and that's basically about it. Like, I really wanted to know what Hawkins was doing in this movie. I really don't know what she was doing compared to like her other nominations. At least I can understand when we get to Blue Jasmine in the next part, and then The Shape of Water, obviously, and other roles she has done, like the Paddington films, at least the first two, of course. Yeah, I just don't remember what this movie was all about because it's been a long time since I've seen this movie. Now into Martin McDonagh's official debut feature after he won an Oscar for live action short with In Bruges, which earned an original screenplay nomination starring Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson. And the obvious the movie where Ray Fiennes says the infamous quote, "It's an inanimate fucking object." That's where that quote came from, and I did not know where that came from until I saw this movie. I am putting this one in D. I was really disappointed with this because I really love Three Billboards Outside of Missouri, The Banshees of Inisherin. But coming into his debut feature for the first time, I was really disappointed. It just ended up like it's almost like a like if you take the Banshees of Inisherin, but instead of like they are not allowed to talk to each other, the best way to do so is just basically they have to get rid of one of them. Like it's like a you're a target to one of them. Like if you get the story that you're like a hit target to kill one of them, it's just like they start as partners, but they're actually supposed to, one of them is supposed to kill each other as a betrayal, but one of them not knowing. And but it's obviously both of them have struggling health issues, especially with Farrell's character, if I'm correct, with an insane scene he does, almost like an attempted scene he does, like at a playground. That's what I do remember about that, and the climax. But there's not really a lot of scenarios going on throughout the movie. It's just like, okay, you have to. It's almost like a game of cat and mouse, or just. That's kind of basically what it is, a game of cat and mouse or mousetrap where they are supposed to be a target to one another. It's just. Yeah, this was a disappointment for me. I really wanted to like his debut feature, but unfortunately, it did not work for me. Now we're into Rachel Getting Married from Jonathan Demme, the director behind The Silence of the Lambs. I think other than that and a couple other films, this was the last Demme movie that was recognized at the Oscars as it got a Best Actress nomination for Anne Hathaway. I am putting this one in A. This is a very fantastic movie, another great and fantastic movie of specifically about somebody who is recovering from a rehabilitation from being a drug addict, specifically to attend her sister's wedding, and she, which is Rosemary DeWitt's the character that's getting married, but Hathaway obviously plays the younger sister, and she is obviously really obviously coming to a most important wedding time, but around the time when she's been rehabilitated. But there's obviously some massive secrets of what's going on with their parents obviously divorced, with her dad trying to find obviously a new lover. Of course, I think they did, but if I'm correct, it's been a while since I see the movie, but I know what it has been, and also the massive secret of what happened to their little brother that was unfortunately caused by Hathaway's character, and throughout the entire journey of them trying to really reconnect while her still being kind of in a rehab but has to be out just for a few days just to attend this wedding. There is a lot of positive moments and a lot of negative moments that they had occurred when they kind of reconnect while she's been out of rehab for a few days. Well, out of the rehabilitation center for a few weeks just for this event. And just seeing this event is pretty unique, but there's also obviously some massive rivalry when it comes to like some of the other bridesmaids, especially one who is a close friend to Rosemary DeWitt's character. I think Rachel is Rosemary DeWitt's character, so yeah, that's who it is because it's called Rachel Getting Married. So yeah, but it's just like you see how devastating like all three of them have to deal with this like throughout the journey prior to the wedding to try to really move on from all the events, and it really worked so well. Really crafted work from Jonathan Demme and how the performances from the main cast, especially Hathaway and Rosemary DeWitt, really had a massive sister connection they had to play throughout this movie, especially for its subject matter. Onto a movie about more about sour relationships. Here is Revolutionary Road from Sam Mendes, with the reunition of the Titanic couple themselves, Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, who at the time was married to Sam Mendes at one point. And this earned a supporting actor nomination for Michael Shannon, which that was really a good nomination for him because his even though he doesn't appear much, but it's really good. I am putting this one in A, but it would be an A minus. I mean, the acting is so phenomenally well done. Like, yeah, there's a lot of yelling and argument going on, but it's just so well. And it's obviously kind of this unique how the sour relationship between these two couple really have to deal with, but it kind of goes into other directions that you would never think it would do. And yeah, Kate Winslet really captivated this role. I do think it is better than her role in The Reader, but I do consider them both leading performances. DiCaprio is also great here. Sam Mendes really had to make sure that he did not have to make this the way that normal bad couple relationship movies would do. And he does it in a way that is pretty unique, especially for what is supposed to be the setting around this movie and just, oh my gosh, and especially what happens at the end or what Winslet does. Oh my gosh. Oh gosh. Man, the way what she does. Oh god. I can't really review if you've not seen the movie, but that is just a massive move that she does that really could be a very, very questionable move of what she did. Wow. Now we go into Tropic Thunder from Ben Stiller. Yes, a movie Ben Stiller and actually direct, I believe. Wow. This insane kind of satire of war movies and stuff like that, and having Robert Downey Jr. earning a Best Supporting Actor nomination, although it's kind of a controversial makeup nomination because it's supposed to be somewhat of a blackface, even though it's not. Even though the makeup is really good on it, but you can understand it did not age well. Even though Robert Downey Jr. had a good 2008 with this film and with Iron Man, of course, obviously the beginning of the MCU. But Tom Cruise has this crazy cameo role he does. But I'm gonna have to put this in E. It's just not funny. Well, it's okay. Oh, no, wait, not funny. It's just not entertaining. That's what I meant. Like, I didn't get pissed off with the jokes or anything like that. It just kind of follows in a kind of like the mocking all the typical movie genres it kind of does or something like that in the war setting. Was it an actual war they were doing? Like, it's just like kind of scenario and stuff like that. It just did not work, especially with the whole journey they had to go through in the actual war while trying filming like this documentary or something like that. What they're doing, and it's just kind of ridiculous of what they're actually doing, and the whole war is just kind of just very odd. I just like all I can think of I remember is just maybe some of the settings and the makeup, and that's it. Now into Woody Allen's Vicky Cristina Barcelona, which earned a Best Supporting Actress win for Penelope Cruz. Since Kate Winslet was put in leading for The Reader, Cruz got the win. I'm putting this one in D. Yeah, D would be fine. I was kind of really disappointed. It's another like one of those love triangle plots with Javier Bardem, Rebecca Hall, and Scarlett Johansson. Like with obviously these two American girls going on a massive vacation to have this relationship with this man, single man who does some sort of art work or some special work or something like that. I forget what it was. And then obviously there's just a massive conflict between which one is the one who gets the love, mainly specifically through Rebecca Hall's character the most. And then obviously Penelope Cruz's character plays Bardem's ex-wife, which is very interesting because Bardem and Cruz are married in real life, as we all know. But it's interesting they play a divorced couple in this one, and I think this was before they got married. So that's the thing. And it's like basically she kind of playing as like somebody who just like Anne Hathaway's character is playing a woman who just got out of rehab or something like that, and just all of her scenes not that very memorable. I don't understand why she won that Oscar. That could have been good for Taraji B Henson in The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, or Amy Adams in Doubt, or Marissa Tomei in The Wrestler. Like all the other four were way better than her. So yeah, I don't understand why Cruz won that. Next up is The Visitor from Tom McCarthy, which earned a Best Actor nomination for Richard Jenkins. A really good one, I would have to say. I'm putting this one in. I'm going to put this in A, but it will also be like an A minus. I really like this story of how this teacher who's coming back from to his apartment, like in New York, for a few weeks, and finds out that illegal immigrant who is living in his apartment, even though he doesn't even know that he was illegal or not until like a little bit later on in the movie, where he is residing with, I think, his probably his girlfriend or kid or something like that. But they really grow to fondness with one another, especially with Jenkins's character knowing how to play this unique African drum that this immigrant brought to the U.S. And he really kind of has a great use of him trying to be happy because he's been very kind of almost like depressed mostly. And then when this young man comes into his life, he kind of gets a little bit better, especially having a nice moment with the immigrant's mother throughout most of like a portion of like the third act of the movie. It's really touching. But his unique friendships with this immigrant is really well done. And this is actually not just credit to the performances, but even Tom McCarthy's writing on this. So, um, well done on McCarthy in this. This is a, even though obviously this is another kind of an immigration story like Frozen River, but even though both of them are good, I do prefer The Visitor over Frozen River. All right, let's get into Wall-E. Um, yeah, which earned an original screenplay nomination, and this is the other movie, like The Dark Knight, that got a lot of backlash for not receiving a Best Picture nomination, and it actually ties with Beauty and the Beast for being the most nominated animated film ever with 6. Yeah, this one is my other all-time favorite Pixar movie next to Ratatouille, so yeah, it's going to double S tier. I mean, Andrew Stanton really made this movie, and this is another movie that really has now stood the test of time of calling out like anti-consumerism. Of like no company should not be like what By and Large is. Like no one should, not even Disney themselves. And Disney almost feels like it feels like they are doing own By and Large if you really think about it, with just nonstop franchises and expand their parks and stuff like that. At least they don't know like something like that to make you fat or anything like that. No offense to the fat people, but that's like there's a bit of a controversial message some people have a divisiveness about. But obviously, the anti-consumerism and environmentalism message is not really the main plot because it's just basically about a robot falling in love with another robot, and the whole journey we go from where Earth was, what is when we get into the movie, where it's just nothing but junk except for Wally himself and a little cricket, and then when Eve comes in, and like it's just Wally kind of knows not really to fall in love with this robot thanks to footage from a video of the movie Hello Dolly from the 60s, that he had as a treasure moment, but he really has a more of a hobby of everything. And then when he goes into the Axiom to try to find Eve, and then when they do, of not also trying to get a human plant back home, but also finding the situation of dealing with the autopilot of something secret is going on why they have been in the cruise for over 700 years, and that's just kind of showing like how bad By and Large is as a company. and they just don't know what the issue is until we get to the code A113, which is obviously a thing that is usually a common hidden Easter egg for Pixar films, but they use it as an element of the plot in this movie, of course. I mean, it is like one of the best Pixar films ever, of course. The climax is fantastic. Uh, the captain is really great with Jeff Garland's performance, but also how his story of him trying to find what Earth is when he experiences for the first time, as well as two passengers named John and Mary, one of them played by John Ratzenberger, their good luck charm. Yeah, it's a movie that really is great for me watching it over and over again, especially since I now have the Criterion Blu-ray, of course. I'm very happy I got that because it definitely deserved it because it's the only legit true Pixar film that is a that Disney really doesn't go into a big franchise fatigue all over. I know they also don't do that with A Good Dinosaur, but Wall-E is like the true Pixar film that Disney really doesn't go unfranchise on because obviously you can't do a meet and greet with the characters in the park, mainly with Wall-E or Eve, even though there was like a little photo meet and greet up at the I think it was in a Pixar night event at Disneyland a couple of years ago. Oh, but they were just standing there, like here, but they were still kind of like not like they were kind of like a little bit alive, but not really. But they just had to be stuck there. But obviously, no one can't really make a Wally move because you do not want to have somebody run over its foot. But yeah, yeah, Disney really doesn't go anywhere in a franchise like this, and Bob Iger really should go back to see this movie how not to be an be a big consumerism as he thinks it is when it should like of the anti-consumerism what he should not do as a CEO. And I mean seriously, a lot of dumb moves he's thinking of right now before he leaves the company. But yeah, any CEO really should watch this movie or a big leader of a company to understand what not to do as a leader of a company. And finally, for 2008, we have Darren Aronofsky's The Wrestler. Oh boy, this famous wrestler who has been going a little bit of issues of not also trying to reconnect with his daughter who's now in college, but also with a unique relationship with obviously a close friend who works at a strip club, and obviously trying to get his career back and even kind of working at a little food facility during his semi-retirement. I am putting this one in C. It's okay. There are some good scenes in the movie that I do find a bit memorable, and the whole scenery and stuff. Mickey Rourke and Marissa Tomei do give good performances. It is a better result of Darren Aronofsky's direction, I will say. Um, but I feel like it kind of falls in a typical format that we would see actually when we get to 2009, the next film we'll actually be talking about. When you compare this film and the next film we'll go into, they are very kind of similar, I will say. And it's interesting that and obviously Rourke and Tomei received acting nominations, as well as the next film that received the Best Actor and a Supporting Actress nomination, as we enter into 2009 with Crazy Heart, Scott Cooper's debut feature. Many of you know him just recently released his new film Springsteen Deliver Me From Nowhere. This gave Jeff Bridges his career win Oscar, as well as winning original song for The Weary Kind. This is going in uh, E. Yeah, but it would be a very E minus. It almost go into F. The only thing that I really do like, other than maybe the cinematography, is just obviously the song "The Weary Kind." That's a great song in or without context of the movie. It's really great. But this is where it's kind of the similar things to the wrestler. Although the difference is with Jeff Bridges' character, it's more of a he's a uh, an alcoholic. So yeah, that's his biggest problem when he's trying to deal with, especially this relationship with his younger woman who is played by Maggie Gyllenhaal with a son who is just a single mother in an interview. It's just that it kind of does follow the typical route that it's almost very similar to The Wrestler and other movies that we have seen where somebody is trying to um, have like dealing with the situation where he's at is even though still dealing with alcohol, and then obviously when things start to go easier with a relationship, he still kind of goes into a drinking mode, and then it goes downhill as always. So, yeah, this is not a really great Oscar career win for Jeff Bridges. I think The Contender was his best one yet. of this century so far. I can't really say in general for all of his other ones from the 20th century, but yeah, this was not a great career win. Specifically, was just a consolation prize. Next up is In the Loop, which is actually a movie from the television series The Thick of It from Armando Iannucci, which earned an adapted screenplay nomination. I did not see the show, and it's supposed to center around, I think, after the third season, but only Malcolm Tucker from the show does appear. All the other characters all were just from the movie. Um, I'm putting this one in E. It is just absolutely confusing to me of what is going on. Like, I get the whole scenario, like, with the British Parliament, but it's just like, I don't know if it's like the language, especially coming from Malcolm Tucker's mouth, or what. It's just like I'm not really familiar with British politics or anything like that, or like what happens behind the scenes or in the offices, stuff like that. It's just, well, with me not watching the show, I think that could be the biggest issue with me not watching the thick of it and where the placement of the show this movie takes place on. So yeah, that might be my mistake, but who wants to watch a television series prior to a movie? Like, there are a couple of TV movies based on television shows you don't even need to watch because they basically explain what it is. I think if the world of the thick of it was explained a lot more in the Loop, then I think I would have understood a lot more. Now on to Invictus from Clint Eastwood. This is his biopic on Nelson Mandela's first days as the presidency during the time when the South African team wanted to get to win like the soccer World Cup, I believe that's what it is, at hosting it. This I actually saw this first back at Sunday school during my freshman year. We saw this for a couple of Sundays of watching the entire movie. It earned a Best Actor nomination for Morgan Freeman and a Supporting Actor for Matt Damon. I am putting this one in. Uh, uh, yeah, I think I'm gonna put this in A. I mean, I really love the whole hearing of what Nelson Mandela's time was as during his first years as president of his country, and also trying to get like what he immediately does. The first thing is when people are starting to leave the presidential's office because they probably think that, oh, he's going to immediately fire them, and he said no, you have the option to stay or you can go. Like, he's not judging anyone, it's just that he wants to work with them, and that's what he was doing, and even with the soccer team to try to get them with a victory, and also to understand where Mandela was during his imprisonment. Yeah, Clint Eastwood really directed this movie. It really should have got a lot more recognition other than just Morgan Freeman's performance and Matt Damon. I think this Morgan Freeman would have been my pick for Best Actor. Honestly, I think this should have been his Oscar win over $1 Million Baby. I'll be honest, even though that it would have been still an Oscar for a Clint Eastwood movie, but I think it would have been a lot better. Now into Julie and Julia, the final film from Nora Ephron, which earned a Best Actress nomination for Meryl Streep. Once again, working with her Doubt co-star Amy Adams and her Devil Wears Prada co-star Stanley Tucci. I am giving this one a C. I really do enjoy all the Amy Adams scenes as Julia Powell to see if she really wants to really get the admiration from her idol Julia Child with all the stuff she is trying to cook in her house. Even her husband is trying to have her massive support to her. But with all the Julia Child scenes, they're just very forgetful. I'm very sorry, but I think yeah, Adam should have been the recognition for the cast and not Meryl Streep. Not even Stanley Tucci didn't really stood out to me in this movie. Um, so that is kind of unfortunate. Like all the Julia Powell scenes, really fantastic. Amy Adams definitely does a great performance. Even the actor who plays her husband. But all the Julia Child scenes is just kind of a bit of a downer to me. I'm sorry. Now into The Last Station, which earned a supporting actor nomination for Christopher Plummer and a Best Actress nomination for Helen Mirren, about Sophia Tolstoy trying to investigate what on earth is going on with her husband on the brink when he dies of what happened. Would all the fortune go away from her or stuff? While this young British novelist, played by James McAvoy, comes in, well, also not also supporting Sophia, but also trying to figure out what's also going on as well, even under Leo as well. I am giving The Last Station a B. It would be a B plus. I really like the whole story of this concept and the performances that Mirren, Plummer, and McAvoy gives. And just seeing where the whole solution comes into play without giving too much away. No pun. I didn't think I did not meant to do that. Joke intended. Um, yeah, it's really, really unique of seeing where all these three characters are specifically going through, on each of their perspectives of who do you support with, and then you kind of understand who's behind all of this, on who's trying to sabotage Sophia specifically. So yeah, really unique period piece. The costumes are pretty great. The production design is also fantastic. Um, the direction, not much of a standout, as it's more of an acting and a writing showcase. But still a definitely great period piece movie that's got a little bit better recognition than just the acting stuff. Okay, now we are into The Lovely Bones from Peter Jackson, who probably should have been directing District 9 instead of producing it, because this earned a supporting actor nomination for Stanley Tucci and not for Julie and Julia. So, where's this gonna go? Oh my gosh. What is this? Now, like, oh my gosh, Tucci's character is just such a creep. Like, no, not really what we see, obviously, in the scene when he has with a young Saoirse Ronan, of course, but the whole build up to the investigation is just kind of ridiculous of what happens. And it's just like, obviously, the girl who plays Ronan's best friend in the movie is the one that really wants to figure out if what Tucci did to her. It's just like, I just don't understand what on earth is going on. I mean, it's just like, oh gosh, the writing is just not that great. I don't know what Jackson was doing when he's directing this. Like I said, he should probably direct District 9 instead of producing it. Even though Neil Blomkamp really did a good job directing his short film into a movie, so I don't blame Blomkamp on that. But yeah, Jackson like basically just was probably focusing too much on producing District 9 instead of what he was doing with his own movie that same year that came out that same year. So yeah, this is another film that has not aged, like an Oscar nomination that's not aged well next to Sean Penn's. Now into The Messenger from Oren Moverman, which earned a supporting actor nomination for Woody Harrelson and an original screenplay nomination with Moverman and Alessandro Ramon. And it's basically about these two military guys that are specifically their job to do is, of course, to deliver a message to family members of a member of who was currently actively serving in the military that was killed in the line of duty, and that's their job to like inform the parents or the wife or husband of that loved one, and just informing them of what has happened. At the same time, our main sergeant, who is obviously doing this because he has been injured and has to finish his duty by doing this, um, their friendship really kind of has an interesting way, but also comes involved with, specifically, one of them involving with a woman of a fallen soldier that he has a massive connection to, played by Samantha Morton, who I believe has two children. And it is a really, really great story of the connection between with his friendship with his fellow co-worker, co-officer. I don't know how do you pronounce a co-worker for the military force, co-sergeant, I would say, and with this widower who lost her husband in the line of duty, and then also going to a wedding to meet, like, I believe his ex-girlfriend during the third act. That was really great to see what he was there. He and his best friend were doing there as party crashers. That was pretty funny. But yeah, it does really shows like the situations that all of these characters really do. Woody Harrelson does a great job in his performance as well as Ben Foster and Samantha Morton. Um, yeah, I'm glad it got at least a little bit of nominations. It would have been a better Best Picture nomination than The Blind Side or A Serious Man, to be honest. It would have made sense, especially with an acting and a screenplay nomination. So I'm gonna put this one in. Yeah, I'll put this in A, but it would be a very A minus. I almost forgot to do that. And now we come into Nine, the musical adaptation of the Broadway play and the remake of Federico Fellini's Eight and a Half. I did saw Eight and a Half. I wasn't fond of it. I don't know. It just wasn't really my thing. Like, I think I also saw Amarcord even as well, so I might not be a Fellini guy, so I do apologize about that, but this film just didn't do anything for me. Um, it's not terrible. I'm just gonna put it in an E. It's just very bland, a very Oscar baitiness. From the Weinstein Company, of course. It earned another supporting actress nomination for Penelope Cruz after she won the previous year. None of the songs in this film are very memorable, not even the Oscar nominated song Take It All, which works well on its own, but doesn't work well in context. It just didn't. Yeah, that was a kind of a bit of downgrade from not Marion Cotillard's performance, but more of the direction, how it went. It tried to be like too much like Chicago, I would say, which is odd because Rob Marshall was the director of this film. Yeah, it just was legit true Oscar baitness. And finally, for the 2000s, we've got A Single Man, the directorial debut of costume designer Tom Ford, which earned a Best Actor nomination for Colin Firth. I am giving this one. I'm also going to have to give this an E. It's just very bland, I would say. Not too blandish. It's just that it kind of doesn't really go much into the, like, obviously, with Colin Firth's character being gay, and obviously what his relationship would be, especially with his best friend played by Julianne Moore, it just does not work for me. This is not because with me being a straight man or anything. It's just I think the writing or the performances just did not work for me. It just wasn't really my thing. I know some people would, whether if you're a straight British person or what, but just for me, I really this was not my cup of tea.